One of the problems is for VCs, they feel uncomfortable to ask those kind of questions for founders. I can actually relate to our founders because I've been through this. Are we aligned in values? So alignment is so important for the success of the team.
Today's episode of Naked is very different. We're not talking to a business builder. We're talking to a VC who is a startup psychologist. The Future Farm was born out of a desire to change the way things are done today. For this, we need to bring along everybody who has a role to play in our ecosystem. And this includes investors who have shown to struggle with the subject. But today, we're talking to an investor who has seen the light. Noa Matz is a partner at F2 Venture Capital, one of Israel's most important VCs. And her title is indeed Startup Psychologist. What does this mean? Noa very passionately shares with us how all investors talk about the importance of team. And when you ask what that means, they usually refer to their gut rather than any scientific method. And Noa is changing that. She has developed a playbook for VCs that is introducing a way to make the process transparent and fair. She gives us insights into how she's applying this methodology to the company she meets and evaluates, and talks about the difficulties of dealing with founders who are reluctant to open up. Being more aware about more than just business metrics and numbers allows the investor to make better decisions, to build a better relationship with the team, and to have overall better companies in the portfolio. For this to work, it is important that Noa has been in the trenches herself. She knows the pains, the ups and downs of building a business, the struggle. During the first part of our conversation with Noa, we discuss mainly the investor community, and we shift our lens to the founders in the second half. This episode is also a little bit longer than usual, but Noa had so much to share that we really struggled to keep things out. We're sure you will agree. Please meet Noa.
This is Naked by the Future Farm, where entrepreneurship is stripped to its vulnerable core. Brought to you by Vladi and Nektarios. And remember to subscribe, follow, and rate Naked to help us share it with the world.
Noa, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to Naked by the Future Farm. Hi, Vladi. How are you?
Hi, Noa. Hi, Nektarios. I'm good, thank you. It's about lunchtime here in Pakistan. What about you guys? Maybe let's locate ourselves.
Well, I'm in Tel Aviv, in sunny Tel Aviv today. It started cloudy, but now it's sunny. And it's morning time, 10 a.m.
Oh, lovely.
And I'm in London, and bizarrely, because people always talk, oh, foggy London. There's never fog in London. But last night got really foggy. And this morning I woke up and you could barely see out of the window. It was so misty. But now it's clearing up. It's London. It's fine.
Get used to it.
Thank you. After 25 years, I think I should. But when I hear sunny Tel Aviv, you're our first guest from Israel. And we're very excited because Israel has such a vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem, but also a very strong entrepreneurial mindset. And we actually have never spoken to somebody. So
very true.
You're on the spot. You're representing Noa.
What an honor for me to be the Israeli representative.
So we're very excited to have you on our show because we were only introduced recently. And I thought, oh my God, I can't believe somebody like Noa exists. And I would like us to kind of dig a little bit deeper into why that is. And our listeners will know exactly why I felt that when you tell us a little bit about your story. And maybe if it's okay with you, you can just start telling us a little bit about what you do and how you got there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's go. I'll start by saying that first of all, I'm a mother and a wife. I have a baby boy, is 1 year and a half, he's 18 months old, and he's wonderful. And I have a good dog. His name is Bono. This is where I come from. I'm a very proud Israeli in all days, even in the harder days. Really, Israel is an amazing landscape. We have amazing things going on here. And one of the things that I've noticed a few years back while I was about to finish my MA in social psychology is that there is a huge gap in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. We essentially have two players in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. We have the founders, the entrepreneurs, and we have the investors. And they feed one another on a positive level. Now, both parties need the same kind or a similar kind of mental support. The founders need to have someone to speak their language, meaning there are endless of very, very strong professional mental health people in Israel that can support anyone, but they aren't people that understand the entrepreneurial language, the business language, that can understand when a founder says, I have a high burnout, or I didn't get a term sheet on time, or an investor declined me, or nobody wants to invest. There are not many people to understand what that means for him mentally, for this founder. On the other level, there's the investors that here in Israel, most investors, they say, we invest in the people. It's all about the team. We hear that a lot. It's all about the team. And we can't say that many know how to evaluate psychologically this team. They can't really say, is this team strong? Do they have what it takes? What it takes, we can also discuss what does it mean, what it takes. We can discuss that later on. But I did understand that we have both parties needing this mental support. Investors also need someone to help them understand, do those founders have what it takes as individuals and as a team? I understood that a few years back, and I started my journey with Team Diligent. That was my business at the time. And it was an entrepreneurial path on every aspect. And I think that's why today I can actually relate to our founders, I speak to, because I've been through this. I'm not looking at them from the side saying, wow, this is really hard. But I know this is really hard because I've been through it. So that's a very important aspect that Steve Jobs said. He said, you can only look back by connecting the dots. You can only connect the dots by looking backwards. So today I understand how important that was for me to climb this mountain barehanded. That's the only way I can understand what they're going through. So maybe I'll start with that, and maybe you can help me elaborate.
It's beautiful. Thank you. It's beautiful that you started there, Noa, because, well, first of all, I really loved how you started in general with the wider sort of life path, because we are all of us more than our roles at work, right? Or, I mean, what work means for us, for a lot of us, actually it means life. What I love about what you said is that, from a lot of the founder conversation that we are having, they've been exactly struggling with that they are, even when they're self-aware and they understand that they are in the moment when they understand they need help, there is that ask that I don't want to talk to a coach or a therapist who have not walked the talk. And then we started looking out there, okay, who are the sort of entrepreneurs who are also have developed that capability to also support you emotionally and mentally, right? Being that backbone for you. And there are not many. There are a lot of entrepreneurs, on the other hand, who go back and they do mentoring and coaching, but they have not built up that capability to sort of offer that mental well-being or emotional well-being support. So I think that's a very important element over there. You call yourself a startup psychologist, which I love again. Give us a little bit of, before we deep dive into the role, give us a little bit of context about the Israeli ecosystem. Are you the only one in the ecosystem, or are there more of yourselves or people similar to your role? How is that perceived in Israel, this sort of role and position?
Okay, it's a great question. So first, it's very important for me to say always that a startup psychologist is a sort of a branding. It's a way for myself to brand myself, for people to understand or perceive in some way or another what exactly do I do. So I'm not an organizational psychologist in practice because I don't work with big organization. I'm not a clinical psychologist because I don't have this kind of training. I'm a psychologist, a trained psychologist that is working with startups, with entrepreneurs. And today, when I've started 5 years ago, the only thing that was existing here in Israel were HR women that are part of the VC that are responsible for HR aspects. They not necessarily were psychologists. They have some kind of organizational training, but that was the only closest thing. And what I do today is not close at all to being an HR in a fund or HR in an organization, but it's important for me to say this because some of them are extremely wonderful professionals. So it's important for me to give them this kind of recognition. So when I started a few years ago, it was not existent at all. Today, we can see it more and more. And I'm being approached by professionals that are saying, I want to do what you do. Tell me how you did it. So you can say I'm the pioneer, or I will say gently, one of the pioneers in this field in Israel. And generally, as you said, Vladi, even in the Valley, we see few psychologists, like trained psychologists that do that. It's more of previous CEOs, previous business people that are now coaching, that have decided to take this path. So definitely you can say I'm one of the first, and we can see how this is the need is growing. Today, since I'm an operating partner in a fund at F2 Venture Capital, so it's much easier for me to support those kind of psychologists that want to take this path. It's much easier for me. Yeah.
Okay, can we, because this is finally the moment where we actually state very clearly, you're not somebody who works in isolation, working with startups. You are actually a partner in a VC,
right?
Which makes you even more unique, right? Because there are people in the market who do work with startups and do the support, the coaching, the mentoring, etc., even as trained psychologists. We know we have a couple of people in the network in the UK who deliberately went from entrepreneur to investor to they've done the whole thing, and then they settled into, I want to combine the two so I can speak the language of the entrepreneur to support them on the journey. But you're actually using your skills to support the fund, which is a very different perspective, right? And this is where I got excited right at the beginning, and maybe at some point in this conversation, maybe it's now or maybe it's for later, is I went through this journey of recognizing that I was part of the problem. So as somebody in an accelerator who would say, when we select the startups that make it into the programs, we apply a VC lens. We look at the startups like a VC, because this was an innovation-driven accelerator. So we would be the counterweight to the industry players, the banks who were interested in the product, and we would say, no, we're interested in the team. But then realizing that, what does it mean? Nobody knows. It's a gut feeling. It's not something that is scientific or any training. But it also means that I moved away from that because I realized that wasn't helping anybody, not being able to do this in a structured way. And there was a lot of hot air and there was a lot of noise. And in a way, what you're doing with your role, to me, resonated when you said that people talk about believing in the team, but what does it mean? Nobody can tell you. Let's bring some science into something that is completely subjective so far. Means you made that step from being part of the problem to addressing the problem for the VCs. So what is your role within the VC now? What does actually the startup psychologist Noa do for FT?
You know, one of my missions in the past few months is to explain to people, what is it that I do? And it's a question that I get quite often, so I'll explain. First, I'll start by giving some credit to my partners, Jonathan Sachs, and Barak Rabinovich are my wonderful partners that are also pioneers, providing first of all, giving room to another person in this partnership, which is not an investment partner, but a psychologist, is a huge step. And they're very brave to do that. Although we've been working together for a few years, taking the step has much significance. So first of all, they deserve the credit. And what I do in the fund is essentially my role is divided into it's pre-investment and post-investment. The pre-investment aspect is, as you described, Nektarios, is the aspect of the psychological due diligence, is getting to understand who are those people that are receiving 2 million to 10 million of our money. And we want to deep dive to their personalities, to who they are. And there are several aspects that I'm evaluating. We can touch it in a second if that's interesting.
Certainly later on.
Okay.
We can go
so
there.
We'll do that. And it also, it's in the context of the playbook. So maybe we can touch the playbook also.
Yes.
That's the pre, and it's done by one-on-one meetings, team meetings, myself with the team, and then me observing the investment committees, the meetings of the team, the prospect with our team, with the F2 team. And then I can see how they interact, how they present, how well do they receive feedback. And those indicators are so important for me. Even their posture, how do they hold themselves? How do they sit? Do they sit bent over? Do they sit open and wide? Are they proud of themselves? How do they conduct the conversation? Do they hold the conversation and manage the conversation? Or should we ping pong them with questions? There's many aspects to this evaluation. So that's the pre. And the post is the work that I'm most enjoying of, and us as a team at F2. I think that's the aspect that we love the most. Investing is wonderful, but then walking this road, this path with our founders is the strongest thing for us. What I do is I support mentally in our founders. It's from ventilation sessions, anxiety, and trying to take off the mask, as I call it. They step into the office in a certain mental space. And then my job is to help them step out of the office when they're creative, when they're fueled, when they feel they are capable of doing the things that they felt an hour ago non-capable of doing. So that would be the one-on-one. It could be team building. It could be, okay, we just raised $10 million on a round. Now we need to understand what individuals do we need to bring to the team. So we'll take the whiteboard and we'll start sketching. We need this VP and that VP and this director and this kind of professional. Try to understand and map the organization given these skills of the founders. What are we lacking in the team? It's also something that we'll touch. And the relationship with the investors. Although I'm sitting in the fund, my job is also to make sure that there's fluent communication and positive and constructive communication between the founders and the investment team and the partner, Johnny and Barak, my partners, with the founders, and help them communicate when they have issues with one another and things are not going the right way. So that's very diverse, the work.
It's very rich. It's very rich. And I think I see on all of us, there's so much to unpack.
Yes.
If it works, and I'm looking on Nektarios is going to nod and give me a signal, let's unpack it and let's start with the pre-investment, the due diligence. So just yesterday, I was talking to the fund I mentioned before we started recording, and they are very progressive in their thinking about this space. It's nearly as if they could be part of this conversation. We would be all like energized. It's like, yes, this is brilliant. Let's sort of develop this further. And the thing that we were discussing, though, was that they were also a little bit struggling with unpacking that bit around due diligence and how do you evaluate, right? And the question they posed to me was exactly around how do you evaluate somebody's the way they asked was about emotional and mental health / well-being. And then we turned towards, okay, the capability around self-awareness, and we started unpacking it. And I went through your playbook and I loved how structured it was. And I was just thinking that I wish I would had it and, would hand it over to them, which I will afterwards, and with the reference to your work. But one more thing to add, that even in our work here in Pakistan with my founders. So one of my co-founders, he is very strong on this gut feel thing and intuition. And I already feel like, bringing this, for me, it's a fairness element. The bit that you did around decoding sort of the playbook, it's a fairness and making it more inclusive, nearly democratizing that sort of lens of assessment or evaluation. But it's going to be a little fight. I know that already, to bring that structure in there and take that intuition, which I think maybe is not what you are trying to do. It's not black and white, but yeah, let's unpack it a little bit.
It can't be black and white. Yes, sometimes.
Maybe we should also, if you can just tell us what the playbook is, because we make reference, but it's better if you describe what it is.
Definitely. So Deep Dive is the psychological playbook for VCs and startups. It initially was the idea to take the methodology that I've been working with and try to provide access to the ecosystem and allow everyone to access this. How do we evaluate founders? What are the key mental elements, the key mental models we need to look at when we first meet a founder in the most simplest language possible, and we will be accessible for everyone. So this playbook was written by myself and my colleague and very good friend, Ben Titanovich from Vintage Investment Partners, which is a very big established firm here in Israel, in Tel Aviv. And what we wanted to do is just to make it more simple and accessible. I've chosen, out of many elements that I've been looking at, I've chosen 3 mental models in founder personality that I wanted to unpack. That was emotional regulation, intrinsic motivation, and mental flexibility. Those are the 3 elements that I see as most crucial for a founder to be successful in his job, in being a founder. Mm-hmm. And we can touch those 3. Please tell me in what way it will be the best way to talk about that.
Oh.
Yeah, so this happens to us. We are full of questions. So let's play it out. We have investors listening to this podcast, and they ask that question as they asked me yesterday. So being an investor, how do I understand working with those models, the guidance you are giving me? How can I use it in being more equipped to evaluate the founder that I have on the other side of the table, to understand whether he's going to be successful in this job, or sort of assess his potential from this lens?
Excellent. And I will also add that it's important for me to always be perceived in the founder side. Mm-hmm. I'm on the founder side. Even here in our fund, I'm on the founder side. And if I have to choose, I will choose the founder. So it's also for the founders. When I'm being asked by founders, what should I look for? You should look for emotional regulation, intrinsic motivation, mental flexibility with your potential founders as well. But let's discuss in the VC lens. It's also applicable for founders. So what we've done, we've built a set of questions for each of those mental capacities, for how can you approach to a conversation with a founder. So one of the things that I've been hearing a lot from VCs, it was the mental conversation is just not acceptable. I mean, it's not something that you do. For me, since I'm in the psychological hat, this is what I do. It's fine for me. It's normal for me even to start a conversation by saying to the founders, look, our kind of conversation is going to be different. We're not going to talk about the business model. We're not going to talk about monetization. We're going to talk about you. And we're going to talk about us, how us as a fund, how we can serve you. Are we compatible for you? Do you want us? So it's okay because my hat is structuring this conversation. One of the problems is for VCs, they feel uncomfortable to ask those kind of questions for founders.
Is it also because there's an assumption that when you talk about mental stuff, people always think, oh, I need to sit them down and ask them, have you ever experienced anxiety and depression? All right. And because your questions are ultimately, when you read the questions in your playbook, they're very logical questions. How did you deal with a difficult situation? That sort of thing, right? Ultimately, it's very common sense. So yeah, please tell us more about what it actually means that you're asking the founders. How do you translate that fear of mental stuff into something very practical and very kind of concrete?
Mm-hmm. So first and foremost, again, to give credit to the ecosystem that have been progressing on this note, feeling more comfortable discussing those aspects. The idea is to take questions like, can I give an example from the playbook?
Go for it. Yeah, absolutely.
So ask questions like, provide me an example for a situation where you were heavily disappointed, hurt, or distressed by someone or something. Describe the chains of events. What happened? What followed those situations? So in this question, we're trying to understand, how do the founders react when something bad happens? How do they deal with failure? And this question can be rephrased in all kinds of ways, to be adequate for a business conversation. For example, the founder can share with us a previous failure. He can say, many times we meet founders of companies that closed the previous company. The startup did not succeed. They had to close. Now they're in their second trial. We will ask them, what happened there? He will share about, or she will share about the failure. And then I would offer the VC to ask, how was it like for you? How did you deal with it? Or even say, just put it on the table. It probably was a huge disappointment for you. It probably was a lot of grief. We know that there's post-startup grief. It was probably very hard for you. And then to see what comes out of it. What does the founder share with us? Just to provide a door to this kind of conversation that doesn't have to be very heavy.
How founders usually react to this when you ask those questions during due diligence process? Well,
first, it's inconvenient at the beginning. It's very important for me. As I said, I'm in the founder side. So I understand that a team that is coming for me for a due diligence, for a meeting with me, first, they're stressed, because when you see a psychologist, the first thing you think is they're analyzing me. So I understand that they're a bit stressed and they don't know what to expect. And I also remember that I will want to work with this team. They're going to be a portfolio company, and I want to be their wingman. I want to be their first phone call. I have to remember that in our conversation and make sure that they feel comfortable with me. Also, another role that I take in investment committee meetings, which are very stressful for founders, is to be that person that is smiling to them, that is opening the door smiling to them, that is asking them something to drink. How do you feel today? How are you? And I feel like the team is, we say in Hebrew, they need bak. They see me, how I do it, and they started to do the same. Being friendly for the founders, and also founder friendly is one of our mottos. Making them feel comfortable. It's okay. And when they're comfortable, they're better. Yes, Nektarios.
So I realize that I'm shifting, I'm leaning in, and it's yes. Kind of funny when you talk about body language, because in some conversations, I'm sort of comfortable in my chair, but now I'm sort of anxious to come in, and I probably look scary on the screen.
No, you don't. I just understand that you want to say something.
Vladi sort of took it down a particular path about how do founders react. And for me, this might be a little bit of a detour, but I feel we need to talk about this. Because you are in the Israeli ecosystem, and let's not pretend Israeli founders have a reputation, right? There's attitude, there's confidence, and there is also, let's also bring gender into this, right? Because there is this heavy weighting towards male founders in a lot of countries that I've worked with. And my experience from Israel is also that there is no balance. There's no real gender balance in the terms of the ecosystem, right? So how much does culture and gender play into your experience? Is it something where you need to adapt to be extra kind of Israeli minded, or do you think this is universal and it can be applicable to different scenarios?
It's a very good question. Well, I work with 95% male. Aside of our team that is 50-50 with our magnificent ladies in F2, I work with mostly male founders. And I can even say I feel like I'm not even sure I know how to work with female founders. I'm not sure. I have to experience that. I think I've worked with 2 female founders. And it's very different. Israeli founder has his reputation, and he justifies this reputation daily. And we see it everywhere. But in the beginning, when we meet them, the pre-seed stage, even the most confident ones, because they're out of their comfort zone, we meet them in the areas where they're not as confident.
It's a power dynamic. We have to be also clear about that, right? I mean, the founder coming into the investor, and I think there is a minority of them that they have the mindset that this is a game of two. I'm coming in here to choose. Most of them come with, I'm either going to be selected, right? I'm going with an ask. So I guess the power dynamic plays to it, but please go on.
Yes, you're very much right. And even the strongest ones, we had a situation lately with two very dominant founders, came from maybe the strongest intelligence army unit, were very much courted by all VCs. And we were a bit in awe with their way of presenting themselves, a bit arrogant and cocky. And by doing the work with them along the path and getting to know them from references that I've been talking to, I've realized that they're lacking confidence. It was a manifestation of lacking confidence. They are confident individuals, they are. But in this situation, I feel in the pre-seed stages, they are all lacking confidence. And it's just manifested differently. Yes.
Staying in the setting, right? So we set the scene sort of, and you are in that room. We are back again to the first evaluation, first meeting. How much of work was it for you with your investment team that is sitting around the table to actually get them on the same page with you? So you are not the only one, you are observer, right? And I guess you probably ask some questions at some point, but how much of an effort was that for you, and what it entails to get your investment team actually to understand how to be a compassionate investor?
It's so great to talk about this because it brings me back to, I think it's obvious that I adore our team. It's the best team. And I had the privilege of choosing because I had team diligent. I've been working with VCs. I've been working with startups. When I left to maternity leave, I'm sorry that I'm out of context. When I left to maternity leave, I was scared that everyone will forget me. And the opposite happened. I got many offers to become part of teams and leave team diligence and be part of executive teams. So I choose F2 every day because of that, because of the team's ability to adjust and their understanding of how important that is. And the path that we've been going through the past 3.5 years that we've been going through together before I became a partner. As an outsourced consultant, the change is enormous because I use the language. I use the language of the soft language with them. They see how important that is. They see how accurate I am. I'm sorry that I'm being unhumble, but how accurate I am when I'm saying, okay, this is a huge market, but we have a problematic team. This will not work. And it takes time. It takes time to see how the reality comes about, to see how important that is.
And do you train them in any way?
Yes.
In terms of what questions to ask, or is there, do you guys divide the roles, or what's happening before? Because I remember we used to do with the fund I worked in London, we in a similar, it was a sort of, I'm looking always into it as a parallel cause, which was the diversity, inclusion, belonging costs. And that was also very important. And we sort of integrated it into assessment. And there was a training, continuous training of the investment team to be able to ask the right question and look out for stuff. So I wonder, is that also what you are doing with your investment team? Did they went through any of that learning and development with you?
So Yes, we have all kinds of sessions. For example, a session that we had is how to read people. That I'm helping them understand body language, voice, tones, and how they, in their body language, can attract the other person to share, to feel more comfortable with you. For example, some of us had a tendency to sit, you can't see me, the people that are listening, cross-handed and cross-legged. And I've shared with my team, your body language must be more open and receptive. We cannot touch our phone. We should pay attention to our facial expressions, because some of us has a tendency to, like, help me with this.
Frown.
Frown. Frown when we're listening to something that is maybe very interesting, but the message that we're sending is, what are you talking about? Especially when the other side is nervous, then he will interpret the signal as negative versus So we should pay attention to the things, and definitely we're working on this. And in our team, each of us has his own expertise. We have Ma'ol on the tech side. We have Tal on the growth aspect. We have Barak, who is more of the business. Johnny is the financials. Each of us has his own thing, and we're combining forces.
Got it.
I have a question on the example that you brought, which is, you might think it's a huge market opportunity, but we have a problematic team. That for me was an obvious scenario, practically avoiding making mistakes as an investor. Do you have the opposite? Do you have cases where your partners might actually be more concerned about the proposition because they don't see the market, and you go, it doesn't matter, but look at this team, they're amazing together? Do you have that as well? Or is it mainly about saying, you guys are good at what you're doing, and I'm here just to tell you not to invest? Or can you give us a couple of examples of the different scenarios where your input may change the perspective of your partners?
Well, thank you. In this specific point of time in my life, in my professional path, it's more of, be careful of this. It's more of that. But I have two examples. One of the junction model. The junction model is our pre-seed program, and one of them is from of a regular due diligence situation. Our junction model is a pre-seed model that if a company comes here and we identify a very strong team, we're not sure where this is heading, we're not sure about the concept, about the product, about the market, we say, okay, take $100K, come sit with us for 6 months in our office. We have a big space. Sit with us. We'll be with you. We'll work with you. We'll coach you, all of us. Let's see what's going on. In a few months, maybe this is going to the right direction. We'll seed invest. We had a situation in the junction where the investment team did not believe the concept. Didn't feel like we have a market here, we have a product here. And I was like, look, this team, we have to try. We have to do this. We have to give them a shot. So we offered them the junction model, and they took the junction model, and it gives us the opportunity to evaluate and help them grow to the billion-dollar company that we believe that they can be. So if we see a team that I see fit for us, then we'll give them the junction model. We won't not invest only based on the team. I have another example that I said, we have a killer team here. We should have an additional look, although the market is not interesting. But unfortunately, the team decided not to move forward, although they're a very strong team. And I still believe that was a mistake. I think time will tell, but I still believe it was a mistake.
We'll call you on that one.
Yeah.
Going back to the playbook, so in the playbook, so we talked a little bit about what you look for in the founder personality. And as I was reading, one of your core pillars is also what you call team market fit. So we're all familiar with the product market fit. We sort of read and live it. What is the team market fit?
Great. Team market fit is the one-liner for it is their ability as a founding team to reach an MVP, a minimum viable. Okay. So do you have what you need in your team? Do you have your expertise? Let's say we want to go for healthcare, a healthcare product. a SaaS platform for healthcare, whatever. Do some of us is a healthcare professional? Do we know anything about the healthcare system in the US, which is our market? If not, the question is there's no team market fit.
Got it.
The most important aspect of that.
So the right capability, experience, skills, they're complementary within that unique combo in the team that can actually make it.
It kind of brings back memories from the days of Startup Bootcamp where we would be going into the final selection for the accelerator, and we would be selecting the startups in collaboration with our partners, either banking partners or insurance partners, because it was an innovation proposition, right? But we would always have the final say. So we would always make it very clear to the other people in the room. And there would be, for instance, like the CVC arm of the bank. And there was, in our very first InsurTech program, there was a guy who was representing one of the largest insurance companies, and he was the VC within the CVC vehicle. He was the investment partner. And it ended up, because in the end, it was horse trading. It was literally like, okay, we'll take this one, but you leave this one out. And there was one where he said at some point, I dislike them so much. I don't care who else you take, as long as you don't take this team.
Oh, wow.
And it was quite a strong say. He was a bit of a diva. But the interesting thing was we actually did exactly what you just said, Noah. We actually believed in the team so much that we thought the weak proposition with the right level of guidance, because of the openness and the complementarity of the people, was perfect. They worked really well together, and it was a bit of a weak proposition, and it was a little bit exotic. But in the end, we insisted on taking them in, and he was grumpy. And they were the first team to exit. It wasn't a huge exit, but they exited like 6 months after the program, which is quite rare, because they listened, they did what the grown-ups told them. They were very young, they were very green, but they worked so well together. And it's such a joy when you work with people where you get that energy that they exude because they work well together and they've got that fit within themselves, right? And I just had this moment of reflection.
Can I add something on that?
Go for, of course.
It brings us back to the first chapter of the playbook, the founder personality, and the third aspect of mental flexibility and coachability. Meaning we have a team that we identify as strong. What is a strong team? Strong team is a complementary team. A strong team is a coachable team. A strong team is a team who has a big vision, at least for us, has the ability to mentally regulate himself. And as personalities and as a team, sometimes one of the founders won't have such a strong ability to regulate himself, but the team as a team has the ability to regulate his members. So that's a very important aspect of bringing the right team. Not necessarily have to have the biggest vision. We can work with this team to become what we want it to become.
Can I hope you don't mind, Vladi. So I realize as we're talking, a lot of the conversation we're having is a little bit us talking to our VC listeners and going, hey guys, look, this is a way of doing things that you should start thinking about. But maybe we can shift the lens a little bit to the founders that listen. So if I'm an entrepreneur right now who is going through some difficulties, potentially because I'm in a problematic team, because I have a conflict with my co-founder, or I'm going for investment and I feel I'm not making progress, and I've got this intrinsic feeling that's probably because of the choice of friends that I made to come into this. How do you deal with that? What is it? Is there something you can say to them? Or is it something that you can share in the way you look at a team like this to give people either hope or maybe an avenue to change something?
Well, being a part of a team and building the right team is very hard. It's a challenging task. It's a very challenging task. And first of all, the way you choose your partners, that's first. Obviously, we can discuss that. But you asked something else. You ask, what do we do when we realize that maybe we've chosen wrongly, right? So it happens here all the time, a lot. With the junction, in our portfolio companies, those are the kind of things that happen, that we understand that there's a misalignment. And I think that if we've reached the point when we understand that there is no way of finding the golden path to work together, and this relationship is a burden for the business, then we need to find a way to separate. And we do not shy away from separation. We do not. It's okay to separate. It's okay to say there is one founder that is more applicable to this company, is more important for this company for various reasons, and there's another one or additional, but I believe it's mostly another one that is not. And maybe we should separate. And I don't feel very comfortable in sharing specific examples, but
Sure.
this happens, and I'm all for it, because it's not beneficial for the company. It's like it's not beneficial for the children when we have parents that constantly fight, and there's no love anymore, there's no friendship anymore, and it's just not beneficial for anyone. It's just better to separate, and our job is to do it in the best possible way for the founders, for the company, for the employees, and for the investors. That's
On
where
that note,
I step in, Vladi. This is the way I step in many times.
I was just about to say that it resonates a lot, and one of the sort of tactics that we were also thinking, okay, how do we optimize for this, right? Because you said, if it happens, then do it right. Also, you can, because there is a way to exit. It can be bad and it can be really good, right? It's or somewhere in the middle, but you have the spectrum. So we started experimenting with our founders around this concept of sort of co-founder marriage and co-founder divorce. And prior the conflict even comes, we started it's seriously a session where they come together and they start thinking out of the box about the scenarios where something can go wrong. So they start to potentially predict if, let's say, I don't know, somebody loses an interest, or somebody, as even in this case, a lot of founders actually, when we have some partnerships where there are actually parents, and some of them were saying the co-founders that don't have children were actually seeing this as a potential risk. So they talk about it. If this happens and you decide to go and you don't want to come back, how do we deal with the situation? And there is this column of potential solutions and ways to actually go about it. So I've seen that some of that conversation happening prior the hardship hits, prior you are even considering the separations, has been useful for some of our founders, even mentally, to sort of start facing and being aware. I guess that's probably the value add.
You've touched an important point. And I want to add to it. You've touched two things. First, setting expectations. And the second one is the alignment. Alignment is one of the sub topics for the next chapter of the playbook. The next chapter is team dynamics. Alignment is one of the most important ingredients in a team, as I see it from my experience. Being in the same level in life, having a family versus not having a family, having professional experience versus not having professional experience, having a specific expertise versus not having. Are we aligned in our professional places, and are we aligned in our personal places? Are we aligned in values? So alignment is so important for the success of the team. This is something that I put much emphasis on. The second thing is the setting expectations. When I coach founders, when they seek co-founders, I tell them, make sure to have a trial period. We do not marry someone that we meet after 2 weeks, right? We first...
Most of the people.
Yes, in Israel, we do have people that get married after 3 meetings. Yes, the religious part of the country. But we live together, we date, we get to know the families. How come co-founders do not do that? So we must have a trial period. And in this trial period, we should talk about everything.
Yeah.
We should set expectations. what do I want from this business? Do I seek for a lifestyle business? Do I seek for a nice exit, a big exit? Do I all the way to an IPO? We have to be aligned on alignment. We have to be aligned on these topics. Therefore, setting expectations is so important. Talk about those things.
Yeah. Now this resonates big time.
One of the things we've seen with the people we worked with so far is that the manifestations of the challenges are usually coming through because people are not prepared for it. People come into this attracted by a cliche or by kind of a mirage, but not really through having a realistic conversation. But even if you tell people 99% of startups fail, they believe they're going to be the 1%, right? But then when they go through the roller coaster, it's usually the same things that come through. It's the experience of loneliness. It's the experience of anxiety. It's the experience of imposter syndrome, which is our current theme that we go content-wise through. Is there something in your experience where people can build a discipline or a practice to prepare themselves for it? Because it's not so much about, you can't avoid these things, right? It's more about how can you prepare yourself so when it hits you, that you're maybe a little bit better prepared not to spiral and just go through it and find help.
So your question is, how do we prepare ourselves as founders for the roller coaster ahead?
Especially first-time founders.
Especially first-time founders. So first, I would make sure that the product I'm working on, the pain I'm solving, is something that I'm so passionate about. I'll take myself, for example, because it's the easiest for me. Going through the path that I've went through without deeply believing that I could be sitting in this chair 5 years post this roller coaster, I wouldn't be able to go through what I've been through. So I have to truly believe that this is the next thing, and it is the next thing. So otherwise, I won't have the mental capacity to deal with the storm. So first, make sure what you're solving, what you're building, is from within, and this is why myself, I prefer to invest in teams that the pain that they're solving are not a result of an ideation process, but the result of something that they've experienced themselves. I worked for a company. I experienced the problem. Now I want to solve it. They know the company, the pain from within. They experience it on their skin. The best way to come to this for an investor, for a founder. Also to prepare our support system, making sure that our spouses, that our family, our close family, that our close friends, they all are aware for what is going to happen. They're aligned with me. I will share with them what kind of support will I need, and even on the partnership, on the spouses aspect, I would say that should be a decision should be made as a couple. As a couple, we both need to take this decision together. Is one of us taking the entrepreneurial path? If yes, we are both part of the game. And what is needed from each of us? What is expected from each of us for this to work? This is from the top of my head.
And
we are both
totally
sort
resonates.
of nodding and thinking, yeah, I could see both of us like, yeah, no, yeah, I know.
I like how you describe, sorry. So I liked how you mentioned that ideation piece, because it's like 2 days ago, I was talking about how I'm so tired of all the people who come with an idea that came out of an MBA entrepreneurship course. And you go, I've never seen one succeed, literally never. And I've worked with hundreds, probably thousands of startups, right? Seriously, it's just the passion isn't there, the fire, the thing where people's eyes light up when they talk about it. So this was...
like it happens to us. We can talk forever. It's the most exciting thing for us to talk about because it's from within. We have the best job in the world. This is how we experience that. And when you feel like you have the best job in the world, then everything is a bit easier or much easier.
Maybe for our listener, this is Noa's way of saying this podcast is going to last about 7 hours.
or a gentle ask for, let's please wrap up. But I think we should also, but Or we always have a chance to record season 2 or a second edition of this conversation. But real, I mean, there is so much in there. I have like a bunch of other questions. I'm very confident Nektarios has an even longer list. But sort of coming to a nice closing the circle here, I'm curious, Noa, how do you support yourself? So you are out there a lot for the founders, for your investment team. What's your support system? How do you take care of your sort of the emotional and mental health, well-being, resilience, all of it?
Well, first and foremost, I use my own psychologist. I go to a professional training, which is very important to have someone to walk you through on the professional and the personal level. I have my team when I need to think things through on aspects that are not confidential. And I think most of all, after a few years of, as I said, climbing the mountain, I feel like now you can see how I took the breath. I feel like now I can relax a bit. Okay, we reached something, we can relax, we can focus on a bit more about myself and my professional development. And I think it's important for us in our life to have periods when we full steam ahead, have to collect all of our motivation and our support system. But there are certain times in life when we can be a bit calmer and more collected and work on different aspects of ourselves, professional aspects, but different. And I think the fact that I allowed myself now to take I feel like I have a bit of a break, although I work constantly with our team, with our founders, I feel like I took a mental break. So I think that's important for us to allow ourselves to, okay, we're doing this differently now. I'm doing it, but differently. And I'm speaking to myself as well, convincing myself as if you haven't noticed.
But the permission that you gave yourself, but I think also to many other people, just by saying it is really powerful, because putting it out there into words makes a big difference for people too. Yeah.
I know that Vladi started sort of wrapping up, but you triggered something that I think I wanted to ask for the beginning and forgot. A lot of what we talk about, and this is what you just described, shows a very kind of high amount of self-awareness and introspection, right? We see that all the founders we kind of spoken to from different walks of life, we're not even talking about just tech founders, but people who have gone through certain emotional, psychological, mental challenges. The moment they recognized something wasn't working was when they started looking inside and listening to what's happening inside. So you deal with people who go through this up and down. And I'm sure you see a lot of people who do not have that capacity or capability to actually look inside and acknowledge that what you see is actually happening. So, and I'm really thinking about the people that we know are out there day to day fighting the fight, knowing something isn't right, but are not prepared to let themselves go there. Do you have something that you use to trigger that a little bit, to nudge them a little bit? Because we really want people to go, it's okay. Give yourself permission to acknowledge that something isn't right. And then you can start the healing, the work.
I think that the expectation to expect a founder who is in the midst of the storm now, he feels like, or she feels like, this is the money time. I hear it like 3 times a day. This is the money time now. We cannot expect in this survival mode. This is a survival mode. We cannot, psychologically, it's not possible. Evolutionary, it's not possible to ask a person that he is in the midst of the storm, is now in a survival mode, fighting a lion. We cannot expect him to go deep, because I see why, and I can physically understand why he or she say, this is too dangerous for me to go deep now, because it will distract me, because it might reveal all kinds of issues that I cannot deal with right now. It will not allow me to be focused. And I can understand why in specific times in life, it's too much we cannot deep dive now. What we can always do is ask for assistance. and say, if I'm not able to have the mental work right now, I can say I will delegate. I can say I need professionals by my side. I need more people to help me. I need someone to talk to when I'm sad. I need someone to talk to when I feel anxiety, but not necessarily, I'm not sure if I answered the question that you asked, but not necessarily go deep dive and solve and make myself aware. Because I do have in mind all kinds of pictures of founders that are not aware to themselves, are not aware to what we say in Hebrew. The king is bare naked. Everyone are guilty, everyone are stupid, but the king is bare naked and is the only one that doesn't see that he's bare naked. But at the point of time that he is right now, in the business is right now, he cannot do the work to get dressed.
But how do you work with this? Because, and now Nektarios, you opened another hour of conversation. But I do remember very clearly. So again, working with the early stage and first time founders as part of that fund in London. And we were also trying to, I think more intuitively, not at all in such a structured way that you are doing it at the moment, introduce this focus into that you as a person, your mental emotional state matters. So we need to invest into it. And I was getting that answer that you just said. It's a money time. Vladi, why are you even bringing this? We had this Founders Anonymous circles where they were just connecting together and sharing experience beyond the business experience. And the first time entrepreneurs were giving me this feedback. They were like, distraction, why are you doing this to us? It's interesting, but, and I wasn't equipped at that point, and I'm wondering what is sort of your guidance on this?
There are points you cannot push. You cannot push him anymore. You need to understand where it's possible and when it's not. But I will answer in a more practical way to your question. I also have a CEO talk forum, and some of our founders did not show up, and it was with an amazing figure in the Israeli ecosystem, one of the most adored worship entrepreneurs of Israel, this COO and co-founder of Lemonade and Fiverr, Shai Wininger. For me, it was an amazing experience to have the talk forum with him, and some of our CEOs did not show up, and I tried to reflect on that, and that's the answer that I came up to. And I said, this is maybe too much for them at the moment. They are in their money time. They cannot distract themselves with this kind of conversation. It would be too much for them. Now, the way I can support those founders and maybe allow them the access to this kind of support is help them in the easier ways. Share them with talents. I know you're looking for a VP product. I have this talent approached me a few days prior. Do you want to discuss with him? And then we'll start build a relationship around the dry, non-soft, emotional areas of the work. Let's talk about the talent, not about you, a talent. Let's talk about a service provider that you need. Some kind of a marketing person, maybe an English teacher. Some of our founders need English teachers. I help them with the dry areas, with the non-mental spaces, and then we build a relationship bit by bit by bit by bit. It's a very delicate process.
There's a lot of empathy in there, what I'm hearing. It's plugging in to that specific need of that individual, right? And designing towards that need rather than plugging in this copy paste box like, okay, please, it's accessible. Yeah, now that resonates. The fluid model and responsive model resonates.
And Noa, thank you so much. This was such a rich and interesting conversation in the sense of it's a different perspective. And we really, I think I can speak on both Vladi and my behalf to say this is really kind of, it's also a learning experience for us. But it's also just exciting to see that somebody like you exists. It's as simple as that, somebody who does the work on the other side, but within that being on the side of the founders, because that's also for us the people we care most about. And our mission is to drive this change on the systemic side. We want to be part of the solution. We want to kind of help people change the way things work, and what you're doing, the great work that you're doing, really makes a difference. And hopefully it's the beginning of a movement and a wave on your side. And yeah, let's reconnect in a while and see.
Please. Let's please. And I'm humbled and honored. I am. Thank you for the time and for the questions and for the wonderful conversations. You are wonderful and intelligent individuals. Thank you. Thank you so much.
If you've enjoyed the episode with Noa today, please consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It really only takes a couple of steps and helps the podcast and the message of founder well-being reach more people. Thank you. Join us next week to reflect and digest. You've been listening to Naked by The Future Farm, where entrepreneurship is stripped to its vulnerable core. To learn more about our work, sign up to our newsletter or visit thefuturefarm.co, where you can also apply to be a Naked guest. Naked is produced by Dan Turgel and edited by Catherine Volken. And remember, subscribe, follow, and rate Naked to help share it with the world.